Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in this Tuesday afternoon. And as we usually do, check in with Professor of Political Science Jennifer Lawless down at the University of Virginia. Jennifer, thank you for joining us today.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, big news coming out of D.C. District Court Judge Emmett Sullivan today, weighing in on former National Security Advisor, former Lieutenant in the U.S. Army, Lieutenant General, and of course, Rhode Islander Mike Flynn, who Mueller had suggested in a sentencing memo not really get much, if any, jail time for his cooperation. But Judge Sullivan had a few stronger words today when the sentencing was postponed, called him selling out the country. What's the reaction been to D.C. District Court Judge Emmett Sullivan's remarks today?
Well, I think the best way to summarize the reaction is with his clarifying tweet, where he said, let me just make it clear that it's possible that Mike Flynn committed treason. I'm not saying that there's evidence to suggest that he has. So I think there was an immediate backlash because it seemed somewhat inappropriate, especially given that both sides had come to what looked like a pretty solid agreement regarding sentencing, for the judge to step in and suggest that if not that the sentence was inappropriate, that certainly Flynn's behavior required that he be held to higher account.
So interesting that he had to provide that clarifying tweet, because he did not mince words today. Is as you said, having to walk things back? Is there a little bit of chatter that perhaps his comments took things too far?
I think so, and I think there's also a general reluctance when players get involved in the Mueller investigation in a way that could look like they're out for blood, or there's a vendetta against the administration, or there's anything personal going on. And so I can imagine, and I think a lot of commentators have suggested as well, that this doesn't necessarily help Mueller's case, because it suggests to the Trump administration anyway that everybody's out to get him. And it's these kinds of missteps and statements that are really not beneficial to anybody hoping that this investigation is going to come to a close and a report is going to be issued that might actually hold the administration accountable for some of its actions.
Have we heard any response from the president yet? Are we expecting a tweet or two, hopefully, at some point?
Oh, I can imagine there will definitely be tweets. I know that right before the sentencing, he tweeted his good luck wishes to Mike Flynn. So my sense is that within the next few hours, I don't know what he's doing right now, but as soon as he's free, I'm sure he'll take to Twitter once again.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed. I mean, we're here in Rhode Island. We do know, a lot of folks do know General Mike Flynn. A lot of his family members have been tweeting in his defense ever since this has taken place. So Trump has some ammunition up here as well. But let's talk about another judge. Let's go down to Texas. Let's talk about Rhode O'Connor and striking down Obamacare.
This is a complicated set of circumstances because they're kind of not what we would expect. Basically, what happened is the judge struck down Obamacare as unconstitutional because the Republicans were able to strip from Obamacare the individual mandate. So by removing the penalty and saying that people don't have to pay a penalty if they don't get insurance, what this judge said was that Obamacare becomes unconstitutional because it no longer falls under Congress's power to tax. And so this is one of those strange circumstances where the Republicans got what they wanted both in the short run and probably the long run. And the Democrats under Nancy Pelosi have already stated that they plan to intervene as soon as they possibly can. And Barack Obama took to Facebook as well, telling people not to worry, that it'll work its way through the court system. But this is certainly not the news that Democrats need. And it's not the news that millions of Americans who are concerned about having health care that covers pre-existing conditions should feel good about either.
So immediately after this decision, GoLocal was first here in the market to write about the potential implications for Rhode Island. Should states be concerned?
I think states should be concerned. Now, again, they shouldn't be concerned about tomorrow or next week or next month because the case does have to work its way through the court system. And there are also other ways for Congress to get involved, especially with the Democratic House, that could, possibly put the brakes on this. The other reason states probably have a little bit of leeway here is that Democrats and Republicans alike support pre-existing condition coverage. And that's the big thing that's going to be lost if Obamacare is struck down. So there are incentives on both sides of the aisle for this to be fixed. But it's certainly a headache that the people that supported repeal and replace and those that did not probably were not expecting and don't want to deal with right now.
So let's tack a little bit to some other news that just came out within the last 24 hours. The New York Attorney General looking into the Trump Foundation and finding that it was used for business and political purposes. Now, I believe the outcome of this is that the Trump Foundation has to wind down. Didn't seem to send as much shockwaves through the country as did these comments on Flynn this afternoon.
Well, I think because everybody knew that the Trump Foundation was working as an arm of Donald Trump's personal and political, aspirations as well. So, right from the beginning of the campaign, even before the campaign, there had been questions about the Trump Foundation. There had been questions about charitable giving, if anything actually existed. There were questions about nonprofit status. So this has been one of those things that over the last couple of years, I think everybody has reached consensus on and thought was inappropriate. This was just official notification that they were going to be winding down. And it was a big win for the New York Attorney General, but, I don't think it took anybody by surprise. The Flynn news took people by surprise because this was supposed to be a pretty, basic sentencing hearing.
Feels like something right out of the show Billions. But with the foundation winding down and having been found to be engaging in business and political activity, what's the repercussion besides a slap on the wrist and, say, shut down the shop?
It's unclear. I mean, there could be people that actually file individual civil lawsuits against the foundation, but by ceasing its activities, it inoculates itself against some of those things. I think more importantly is the fact that they're choosing to shut down the foundation when the foundation is only one piece of a much broader set of problems they have. So it's the foundation, it's the Trump organization, it's the Trump campaign, it's the Trump inauguration committee, it's the Trump transition team, it's the Trump White House. I can't even speak it. All of these pieces are sort of closing in around Donald Trump. And the fact that the family has basically said, all right, we'll get rid of the foundation, suggests that they see the dominoes falling and they're trying to clear their plates.
So I was terribly disappointed last week when you were out of the country and we weren't able to get you in after the big Oval Office powwow between Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, the president, and a very quiet Mike Pence. Now, of course, the politics of a showdown continue. And if you're a prognosticator, what do you envision?
So the thing that was really remarkable last week was that Donald Trump was goaded into saying and then said with great glee and pleasure that if there's a shutdown, he will happily take full responsibility. And so that puts the Democrats in a little bit of a tricky situation because obviously they don't want to shut down. It's bad for the country. It's bad for their constituents. But a shutdown where Trump has gone on record saying, look, it'll be all my fault, I'll take responsibility for it, is something that could be politically powerful for them moving forward. So I think the Democrats have the upper hand at this point, and we're already seeing the White House suggesting that, well, they can build this wall by taking pots of money from here and pots of money from there, even if it's not in the actual bill that would keep the government open. So it looks like the Democrats are probably going to have the upper hand, and that although Trump said he thought a shutdown would be completely reasonable and a plausible step forward, the Republicans are probably pushing against that.
They do seem to be walking back that hardline approach to the shutdown with the wall at the White House. But let's talk a little White House politics and looking at 2020. Of course, after the November elections, we had spoken before that it was too early to speculate who the Democrats were really looking at the next election cycle. But another week, another poll, Sanders is at the head of the progressive one in front of Warren. It's draft Beto O'Rourke. Is there anything surprising of this? And is the left side of the party run the risk of cannibalizing itself?
Of course, but everybody does in an election year where their party doesn't hold control of the White House. There are a couple of interesting things. First was the meeting between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, where if you believe both sides, they claim that they really just wanted to figure out who could be the better voice for progressives, and they don't want to run against each other. The irony there, of course, is that O'Rourke would be the voice of the progressives, and he wasn't at that meeting. So it's unclear that it's really a decision just for Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders to make. The other piece of news that came out, I think, yesterday was that Tulsi Gabbard, a member of Congress from Hawaii, has announced that she's forming an exploratory committee to run for president. And this just highlights the fact that there are going to be lots of people that are going to dip a toe into the water and see what it feels like. And focusing just on the people that have high name recognition at this point is what the polls are getting at, but it probably doesn't tell us much about what's going to happen 6 months from now or a year from now.
Speaking of looking ahead, as we're here on Tuesday afternoon, and hopefully we'll be catching up with you soon, but not next Tuesday. Tell us what you're going to be keeping an eye on as things may or may not quiet down inside the Beltway.
Well, I really think we are nearing an end with the Mueller investigation. We've gotten to the point where I think we're days or weeks away from another batch of indictments, whether they be Jared Kushner and Don Jr. or other high-profile campaign officials. But it's hard to see how the Michael Cohen news from last week, coupled with the fact that Flynn continues to be helpful to the special counsel, and that's in part why the sentencing was delayed, is not going to yield some pretty news-breaking and newsworthy indictments. So, I think this is not going to be a very Merry Christmas for the Trump family.
Well, we appreciate, as always, you're taking the time to Skype in. Likely not catching you next Tuesday, likely not the Tuesday after that either. So hopefully either we'll sneak you in or we'll catch you in 2019. Jennifer Lawless down at the University of Virginia, thank you for Skyping in today.
Of course. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get a lot more local here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, and we'll be right back.